All right, ladies and gentlemen, reports about the ongoing abductions in Kenya have reached the highest office probably in the world, that is the office of the President of the United States, forcing the US government to issue directives to the Kenyan government, or rather to President William Ruto, to stop the abductions. And you can see that poster, well designed, well crafted by the Nation Media Group, saying that US joint calls for respect for rule of law in Kenya. Now, in this video, I want us to look into why the US government decided to issue this directive and what this means for President William Ruto and his administration. And without wasting time, let's get after it. The first thing is that news of abductions, the perpetual abductions that have been going on in Kenya for several weeks, has caught the attention of the international media. Media houses like Al Jazeera and CNN have been airing these abductions, and therefore these ones have been putting the government of Kenya to shame. And remember, the US government is a very strategic partner to the Kenyan government, and therefore when the US government sees all these abductions going on here and there being paraded in the international media, it propels them to speak up against these abductions. For instance, Al Jazeera actually did the Lord's work when it developed a report of how Kenyan youth, Gen Zs and millennials were protesting on the streets of Nairobi against the abductions that have paralyzed the general well-being of many people in Kenya. Here's the tape.
Police in Kenya have fired tear gas at protesters who were accusing the government.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is it.
Critics. They also used horses to break.
Now that was Al Jazeera doing the Lord's work.
Together as part of the protest. Security forces in Kenya have been accused of dozens of illegal detentions. Staying in Kenya, young people still say they want change months after nationwide protests gripped the country. As part of our Year in Review series, we look at Kenya's wave of demonstrations which were triggered by a but grew into widespread anger at corruption and resulted in calls for the president to resign. Malcolm Webb reports.
Kenya's never before had protests like those in July. Thousands of people took to the streets in about 50 towns and cities in a series of demonstrations.
Remember, this is a foreign media. Imeamua kumulika tu Kenya. Al Jazeera likes taking advantage of these unfortunate events in Kenya. Wakati kuna fujo na rabsha, ndio inakuja inamulika. Ndio dunia mzima ione. Okay, let's continue.
During one protest in Nairobi, demonstrators entered parliament. Ruto's government abandoned the tax hikes, but protests continued for weeks. These cracked down.
So not only is it Al Jazeera that is doing the Lord's work, as some of you call it, but also CNN. Our very own Larry Madowo decided to inject properly, and he did his very best in ensuring that the international community gets precisely news about the shocking waves of abductions that have been going on in Kenya in the last couple of days. As usual, Larry does not play or joke with the microphone.
It's a bit of a mystery in Kenya about who is abducting government critics who have been disappearing since these protests began in June. At least 82 people, according to the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights. And what seems to happen is as soon as somebody becomes critical of the government on social media or organizes a protest, they disappear. Some of them have come back and said they were tortured. They were chained to the floor, naked, and questioned about the source of their funding, or just why they're being so vocal against the government of President William Ruto. He says that he will stop the abductions, but he also had a conditional part of that he will stop the abductions, but the young people of Kenya have to behave, they have to be polite, and they have to be...
Mr. Larry Madowo, permit me to tell you that it is not a mystery. People know precisely who is abducting government critics. Tunajua vizuri nani huwa ana-abduct hawa wase. Si ati ni mystery, hii sio miujiza. Wenye wao wanakuja wanakuabduct, wanakuweka kwa Subaru, alafu they drive off with you. We know these people. Hii sio mystery bana. Ambieni hao majamaa ukweli. Speak the way Rigathi Gachagua spoke. Wacha ku enda hivi bana. Hey, Larry bana, lakini umejaribu.
Disciplines, which people saw as a tacit endorsement, or at least an admission that his government has been abducting some critics. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, several more people have disappeared. Some of them young people in their 20s who posted AI-generated images of President William Ruto in a casket. One of them, a popular cartoonist who's been sharing satirical silhouettes of President William Ruto. They've all disappeared. Their families believe they were picked up, tracked on their...
Larry is injecting like crazy. Jamaa chasing na microphone. Larry Mado, Mr. Larry Mado, that's a good job. Congratulations, Larry, for representing us well in the international media. Our very own son, bred and grown and taught and raised all those other things in Kenya. Congratulations, man. Hapo ulifanya kazi safi. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I tend to believe that Ruto is likely to stop these abductions now that US government has delivered a stern warning. I think that Ruto is going to stop these abductions because, you see, President William Ruto is fond of listening and heeding to the calls and directives from the US government. Remember, Kenya and US are strategic partners. The US is more powerful than Kenya, and Kenya depends on the US. Actually, Kenya needs the US more than the US needs Kenya. Remember, during the Adani deal, when the Adani group was indicted, when the Adani group was indicted in the US, William Ruto had to cancel the ongoing negotiations, or rather the ongoing deals that had already been scheduled, if that is the word, that had already been planned between Kenya and the Adani Company Limited. Now, that was a demonstration that President Ruto actually listens when the American authorities raise their voice. So I tend to think that if the US government has coughed the way they have done, William Ruto is likely to genuinely stop these abductions because there will be diplomatic repercussions. There will be economic and diplomatic repercussions. There are things that you can't just do and get away with it. The fact that your president does not give you the unilateral authority to just run your country the way you want. There are so many things that must be considered by a sitting head of state. You have to consider whether your dealings with people, or rather whether your mode of leadership can be accepted by the international community. Remember, Kenya is a country that depends heavily on external loans. If external lenders decide today and say that, William Ruto, if you don't stop these abductions, there will be no more loans coming into the country, then William Ruto will have no option other than to stop these ongoing abductions. So I am convinced beyond any reasonable doubt that William Ruto is likely to bring to an end these abductions that have paralyzed the social health of our country. At the end of the day, guys, this is just but my opinion. Do let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more informative content such as this. In the event you're here for the first time, just check over my channel and I guarantee you will be treated to a ton of content on recent political, policy, and governance issues in Kenya.